NBC News. Jane, you are at a nearby hospital, which has been one of the staging areas where the injured have been taken. Tell us exactly where you are and what have you got for us?
I am at Swedish Hospital, David, where 4 of the injured have been taken. Just a few minutes ago, we got their names and an update on their condition. They include 18-year-old Valerie Schnur. She's in stable condition. She has 9 shrapnel wounds to her chest. Now, earlier you may have heard about a girl who came in here with 9 bullet wounds to her chest. Turns out they weren't bullet wounds, they were shrapnel wounds from an explosive device. So they have just soft tissue wounds, no vital organs. She's going to be okay, but of course, she was hit with one of those pipe bombs or whatever it was, and that will scar her for
It may have
life.
been grenades, Jane. Speaking to some of the students who were running from the campus earlier today on MSNBC, they had told me that, in fact, these guys came through, started shooting, and had grenades and were just throwing them around. So that may be consistent with the kind of shrapnel wounds that you're talking about.
She is, unfortunately, the least seriously wounded person here because the other 3 are much more seriously wounded. One is 17-year-old Anne-Marie Hochhalter in critical condition with a gunshot wound to her chest, a 9mm gunshot wound. 17-and-a-half-year-old Sean Graves in stable but guarded condition with wounds to his back and other internal organs. And 17-year-old Richard Casaldo is still in surgery after many hours. He has abdominal wounds. He is in very critical condition. He should be out of surgery within an hour. You know, David, there were reports earlier that this trenchcoat mafia may have been targeting minorities or athletes, and I asked the spokeswoman here if any of these 4 victims fit that category. All she knows is she's seen 2 of them, and those 2 are white, so that doesn't fit with what we heard earlier so far.
Jane, quickly, what else are you seeing there? Parents on the scene at the hospital, obviously, people trying to get as much information as they can?
Parents are here. They are inside. They are stunned. They have all been able to talk with their children. And there's also an emergency response system, a plan which has gone into operation nearly flawlessly here, where parents are calling various locations. And hospitals like this one have students sign in or get their names down so you can call in if you don't know where your kid is and make sure your kid is all right, or the horrible news that you don't know where your child is.
Jane Wells of NBC News at Swedish Medical Center in Littleton. Jane, thanks a lot.
Sure.
We turn now to NBC News correspondent Leanne Gregg, who is back at the crime scene at Columbine High School. Leanne, we just spoke to a member of the Jefferson County team who's been on the scene there, a spokesman who told us the crime scene has not been cleared yet. What can you tell us from the scene that's any different?
David, we know that at least 4 SWAT teams are still inside. They're combing the area, looking for the possibility of more victims. And they have a dangerous situation. They found some explosives both outside the school building and on the inside, many of them near the library. The 2 suspects who have apparently committed suicide apparently strategically placed explosive devices around their bodies. So some bomb squads are also dealing with that as we speak.
Why is it that the crime scene has had to be left undisturbed for so many hours now? The shooting first happening about 11:30 a.m. Mountain Time, and yet here tonight we're still talking about an active crime scene.
I'm sure part of the problem are the explosives, dealing with them, getting rid of them before they can identify clearly the victims and finish their investigative work there. But specifically, I don't know. That's just a guess on my part.
What is the rest of the scene like there? Who's still there? Are a lot of the parents still ringing the school, or have they cleared out at this point?
There aren't a lot of parents here now. The scene is much more quiet. If you can take a look, if we can move the camera. A lot of media still in the area. Of course, a lot of police. Helicopters are still landed throughout the area. The parents were told to go to other locations, a couple of schools in the nearby area and a library to try and reunite with their children. So it's fairly quiet. Earlier it was chaos, and now it's much more controlled chaos. David?
Leanne Gregg at Columbine High School for us. Stick around if there's more information. We certainly want you to pass it on to us, as we'll be keeping a check on this. Thanks very much, Leanne Gregg.
Sure.
Also on the phone with us tonight is Kara Sanders. She is a 10th grade student at Columbine High School. She is home safely, we are happy to say tonight, with her family, where perhaps up to 25 of her classmates will not be tonight if they are in fact the dead out of this tragedy. The final tally is still not confirmed. Kara, are you on the line with us?
Yeah. Hi.
How you doing?
I'm fine.
Tell me about what you saw and what you heard and where you were when all of this went down.
We get out of fourth period at 11:10, and I walked downstairs and sat down my backpack and talked to a couple of my friends, and I had lost my makeup today, so I asked one of my friends to walk with me to my car. This was about 11:15.
So this is a passing period, right?
Yeah, except I have a lunch. It was the beginning of lunch.
Okay.
So one of my friends, Jen, came with me, and we were on our way to my car. We walked out the doors by the cafeteria, and we heard about 15 shots, and she was like, "Was that gunshots?" And I didn't think so at all. I thought it was like firecrackers or something like that. It didn't really seem like it at all. And so we kept walking to my car, but then I turned around again, and there's this ledge on our school. It's a little trail that's higher than all the other schools. And it was a overweight, like white male with a black trench coat on, and he didn't have a mask on. Everyone's been saying that the people they saw had a mask. I don't know if
Did you recognize him? Have you seen this guy around campus before?
Yeah, I've seen him at school before. I mean,
You have?
I don't know him, don't know his name or anything, but I had seen it. I know of him, and he didn't have a mask on, and he just looked like all calm and everything, and so I still didn't think it was real. But there was this little tiny, like 5-foot blonde girl, like standing in front of me, and she was probably like 100 yards in front of me, and she went down to her knees, and I thought she had tripped, or I didn't know. And so her back looked fine, but then this boy came up behind her to try to pick her up.
And she was evidently shot. Kara, stay on the line for us just a minute. We have to take a commercial break. We want to get into the rest of your story on the other side of it. We're calling this one what the authorities have called it. Our title tonight, quite simply, Suicide Mission. We're back on Rivera Live right after this.
It was okay.
Ed Bradley, do you have a question for either Braden or Deborah?
I wondered if Braden had heard anyone say anything, any of the people who were throwing the pipe bombs or doing the shooting.
I hadn't heard anything from the people wearing trench coats. I just heard right when I got home what other people heard.
I've seen, Braden, some stories that they were part of a group known as the Trench Coat Mafia.
Yeah.
That's something that you knew about? They wore trench coats all the time to school, black trench coats?
Yeah, it was pretty well known throughout everyone I knew. Most times they were just referred to as the TCM for short. But yeah, I just minded my own business, and we never actually talked to any of them.
Were there a lot of them in that group, Braden?
Excuse me?
Were there a lot of people in that black trench coat group?
I wouldn't say more than 6 to 12.
Did the rest of the school regard them as kind of weird?
Pretty much.
Did you know, Deborah, did you know about this group at all? Did your son ever talk to you about it at home? Did you ever see them around town?
No, I wasn't aware of them. My sons keep pretty much to themselves, and nothing's discussed unless it personally involves them. So I never heard much about them. They never had an interaction with them. My older son was aware of them, and he graduated with a couple of them, and he said they like to intimidate and stare people down, but that's as much as I knew.
Ed, do you have any other questions?
No, you'd never heard anything about them having weapons. You say they just stare people down and try to intimidate them, but there was never anything beyond that with them?
Well, that's all. I overheard my son talking, and that's all he said at that point. He is 20, he graduated a couple years ago, and that's as much as I knew about him.
And they were in school at that time, so...
He said he graduated with them, but they were kind of into intimidating people and just staring them down, and I think they were just, he thought what happened now was a spin-off group.
Thank you both very much, Braden and Deborah. Ed Bradley remains with us. When we come back, two of the reporters who covered this all day long will also meet medical people and others to discuss it. Don't go away.
Tonight about the gun, apparently of self-inflicted gunshot wounds, according to authorities there. The suicide mission is what it's being called. Kara Sanders is on the phone. She's a sophomore at Columbine High School. Kara, I want to get you to specifically respond to the description, to the gunmen, what you saw them wearing.
I saw one man, he had a long black trench coat on, and he had dark hair and big bushy eyebrows and dark eyes, and he was pale, and he was large. He was overweight, and his coat was just, he had a lot of ammo and stuff, so his coat was just real big and weighed down.
Did you see what was inside, or you just saw it was bulging?
I just saw it was bulging.
Okay.
And there was one other guy standing next to him in a white T-shirt that didn't look upset at all, so he obviously was with him because he didn't look upset. He wasn't running. He was just standing there.
Okay. Kara Sanders, thanks very much for talking to us. We're so glad you're safe, and I'm sure your family is as well tonight. Thanks very much. I want to bring in some of our guests now. Peter Boyles, an outspoken host of a popular talk show on KHOW AM radio in Denver and a good friend of the program. He's been at the high school for most of the day. He joins us now from the studios in Denver. Peter, bring us up to date on some of your own reporting throughout the day, but I'd like you to start on this this notion of who these gunmen are and what this trench coat mafia is all about.
Let me make a correction. I hosted our show throughout the afternoon from the studio from KHOW while this was all taking place. I was not at the school.
Okay.
But we have received, as you can well imagine, a tremendous amount of information that came into our newsroom and came in by callers to KHOW. In essence, what we understand, and again, this is at this point, that these two were outcasts. They actually have a website that we have been able to access. And the bottom of their website, in German, it says, Ich bin ein Ausländer, I am an outsider. Interestingly enough, the young people that we were able to listen to and talk to who knew about the so-called trench coat mafia, they were talking that these people were some people called them reenactors, other people called them paramilitary. Apparently they had in one of their video classes in school, one of the two or perhaps three, no one's quite sure, had a large gun collection, and their video project was to show the guns, the parts of these things that, again, that we're not sure of. But today is also Adolf Hitler's birthday, and it plays out in the paramilitary right in America today. Were these two young men wannabes or reenactors of these kinds of organizations? At this point, I don't think anyone knows, but it certainly is part of the makeup of these kinds of organizations. Also, one of them apparently had a black four-door BMW, which the police officers blew up in the parking lot of the high school, thinking that it may be wired for bombs. So it's very difficult to see these kids as outcast and poor and downtrodden.
Peter,
one of them driving a Beamer.
I got to get a break in here. We got a full panel tonight to talk about Littleton, about this crime. It's all coming up. A suicide mission. That's what authorities are calling it tonight. That's what we're calling the show tonight. Back in a minute.
A TV network here, we understand, and a radio.
I have to take a break, and I hope you and Katie will hang in with us because I'd like to talk to you some more. I'd like your reaction to what is going on with what is known as the trench coat mafia that produced two kids that evidently premeditated a bloody, killing, suicide mission rampage today. And why you think it is that the school or the authorities were unaware that this was going on. It was on the internet. There were students there who knew about it. Why do you think this slipped through the cracks?
Well, if it were more than just a few kids, maybe it would have gotten the attention. But from what I'm hearing from the kids, they were very low profile. They didn't cause trouble. They didn't provoke confrontation. I can't explain what happened at Columbine any more than I can explain what happened in Arkansas or Kentucky. I know that those two kids are not typical of teenagers in general or Columbine teenagers in particular. Obviously, I've got a daughter that I treasure as I do my other children, and she's not that way. I don't have the answers. I don't understand it. I wish I had the wisdom of the ages, and maybe I could give somebody some advice that might help to prevent this. But I'm not that wise. I'm just a mom with a 14-year-old daughter standing next to her, thank God.
Katie, one of these students that a KUSA reporter talked to today, Brooks Brown, told a long tale of going. They didn't identify this shooter except by first name and Eric, and I don't want you to say the last name even if you know it. But this evidently was a well-known problem kid. and he posted on his website threats against this Brooks Brown. He seemed to be conducting his malevolence out in the open, and as if, and no secret. Do you have any explanation why nobody seemed to know about it and nobody seemed to be willing to take some sort of step to head it off?
I don't really think that they took him that seriously. Like I said earlier, I mean, they didn't do anything. They didn't, you know, have confrontations with people. They didn't do anything. I mean, it seems like they really targeted the kids who had talent. I mean, Brooke is such a talented actor, and from what I know, he is just the nicest person, and words cannot explain, you know, just what's gone on today. It doesn't even seem real. Kids like, you know, like that don't go to Columbine, it seems like. It seems like they're in the other schools.
Julie, would you be in favor of a little more aggressive approach? You know, for instance, there are others who were part of the so-called trenchcoat mafia who are wandering around. Would you be of a mind to recommend that somebody shake them pretty hard to see what's going on?
I mean, that's a really tough question. We live in a society of law and of respect for individual rights. So on the one hand, that kind of approach would grate. On the other hand, after what happened today, I suppose if they shook him pretty hard and got evidence that even more nastiness was in the offing, then I'd say go for it. I'm kind of a mixed mind, but I also want to say that, you know, in looking at this, hindsight is always 20/20. You know, and it's real easy right now to look back and say, we should have seen this, we should have recognized this, these kids were giving all these signals, and we do recognize that in hindsight, but at the time, it's a little bit more difficult to discern because we aren't privy to what's going to happen in the future.
Let me thank Julie Crona and Katie Crona and congratulate you both for coming through a very harrowing day. We appreciate you staying up late. We're going to take a break. When MSNBC's continuing coverage of the tragedy in Colorado continues, we'll talk about the trench coat mafia. What went wrong? Right back.
The most broken when we did make entry into the library. It was a pretty gruesome sight.
The carnage was so great, the scenes so disturbing. The president went on national television tonight and promised to combat the epidemic of school violence.
That we must do more to reach out to our children and teach them to express their anger and to resolve their conflicts with words, not weapons. And we do know we have to do more to recognize the early warning signs that are sent before children act violently.
It all began at about 11:30 this morning when two gunmen burst into Columbine High School in suburban Denver. There was gunfire, reports of explosions. Police and emergency personnel descended on the school. The whole terrifying scene played out on national television.
Well, it's happened again. There's been a shooting at a school in America. This time...
Students poured out of the school, telling stories about their encounters with the young gunmen. Stories that sounded strikingly similar.
I saw them have weapons, black masks, black trench coats, and needless to say, I was very frightened. I saw some students running, and I felt lucky that I got away as fast as I did, and I thank the Lord that I got to hide where I did, and they did not see me and blow me away subsequently.
We heard a shot, a loud bang, and then we hear some guy go, "Holy crap, there's a guy with a gun." So everybody starts freaking out. One of my friends goes up to the door and says there's a guy standing there. We evacuate to the corner of our classroom, and my teacher just doesn't know what to do because she's so freaked.
As the crisis unfolded, the images often outran the information. For much of the day, more questions than answers.
We really don't know how many suspects. We do feel like we're dealing with certainly more than one.
The police officer tells me they aren't sure if there are any more injuries because they really don't know what's going on inside the school.
There was mass panic, and apparently the gunman then moved into the library.
I have heard shots. We took cover behind our patrol vehicles, and it sounded like
Heavy shots as in a long rifle or some kind of an automatic weapon.
We understand that there were at least 2 explosions earlier on.
Have you heard from any of your friends? Did all your friends get out okay?
I have no idea. I haven't heard from a single one.
In a high school of 1,800 students, literally thousands of parents, relatives, and friends were desperately looking for information about their loved ones.
The police are asking you not to call 911. They're trying to get an information number up.
We have parents calling the church trying to find out if their kids, if we heard anything, if we know anything.
And police really had their hands full just trying to keep people from just, driving right by this barrier. They've just had to run after people and stop them because obviously, parents are very concerned and with good reason.
The fear spread to a nearby elementary school.
The school is in lockdown. None of the kids can get out. No one can get in.
And at 1:45, 2 hours after the shooting began, as more students managed to escape Columbine High, their stories told on live TV described the brutality inside.
I was in the library, and the whole room was just filled with smoke, and I heard gunshots all over, and the 2 guys came into the library and were just shooting everyone that they could. And the girl who was sitting right across from me under the table was shot in the head right there. And, I mean, it was the worst feeling that I've ever had because, I mean, blood was just going all over.
Now, how did you manage to get away?
Once they left the library, we just kind of ran and were running towards the cop cars.
Swarms of police and rescue crews attended to those who could get out. Emergency workers showed up on their day off to help.
There are probably about 150 to 200 officers from 6 or 7 different districts. There are still a lot of questions unanswered. There apparently has not been communication established with the shooters inside the building.
But even though no one had talked to the gunman yet, a theory was forming on who they were.
And we understand from one witness, a student who goes to Columbine High School, that she describes a group that used to hang out, in her words, at the school, used to go by the name of Trenchcoat Mafia.
Several student witnesses said they thought the shooters were part of a clique that wore black trench coats to school. One claimed to hear a young gunman say why he was doing it.
They were saying that, that they wanted to do this for their revenge. For the school, I guess, because, I mean, they're such an outcast at our school.
At 1:50, as SWAT team officers entered the school to get more kids out, others detained 3 students nearby.
We had 3 individuals that were ascending upon the school wearing kind of military camouflage fatigue type things. They were detained, and it appears they are associates of these gentlemen or good friends of these gentlemen.
Still, no word from the gunmen, whoever they were. But reports from local hospitals spoke of multiple gunshot wounds. One girl suffered 9 wounds to the chest. Student survivors were loaded on buses and taken to a nearby elementary school. Parents were frantic to find them.
My daughter Bethany Urban, I can't find her.
Some parents were reunited with their children, relief that defied words. Some students were still wondering what happened to their friends.
Who specifically are you looking for from your friends?
A couple of my friends, 2 Megans and Courtney and Nicole, and we're just trying to find them all.
Off the perimeter.
3:40 p.m. News reports indicate the female student with 9 chest wounds is out of surgery and incredibly is in fair condition. At least 2 other teens with multiple gunshot wounds are still in the operating room.
More students, still more.
3:50 p.m. Law enforcement officers continue to evacuate shaken students from the school, ordering them to run with their hands on their heads. Everyone is a potential suspect.
Hopefully none of these are any of those that were involved in the shooting.
For some, there is relief.
I don't know, our friends just showed up. So. Yeah, and more people keep showing up, so we have more and more reason to be happy.
But many students are still unaccounted for. Inside Columbine High School, the extraordinary drama continues to unfold. SWAT teams combing every inch, searching for students, suspects, alive or dead. At 4:05, after a day of watching and waiting, Steve Davis, a spokesman for the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office, holds a press conference to deliver the sobering facts. The news is not good.
Right now, the latest update that I have heard is that we have approximately 15 to 18 people who have been transported to area hospitals. We do have some fatalities.
For the first time, Davis confirms there are fatalities. 2 suspects dead in the library. And Davis says the death toll inside could be as high as 25.
It's unknown whether those fatalities are students, faculty, or a mixture of both.
The scene inside, Davis says, is gruesome. Explosive devices were also found near the dead suspects.
The SWAT team from our department has been joined by at least 3 other SWAT teams from area agencies, and they are still currently working the area and the building, looking for additional victims and suspects.
A third potential suspect, not at the school, has been taken into custody. But law enforcement officers say they still are unsure what was behind the deadly shooting spree.
Well, it appears to be a suicide mission, but one, I think we've had a lot of media attention on these things around the country, and you don't know how much that plays into giving somebody else an idea to do it.
While one student had speculated that revenge was the motive, another who was inside says there may have been more to it than that. Hate.
I looked out the window, and there's a kid with a trench coat and a shotgun throwing pipe bombs in the parking lot, and then he shot a girl outside. And then he came into the cafeteria, and you could hear, like, bombs and shotguns going off. And then he came into the library and shot everybody around me, then put a gun to my head and asked if we all wanted to die, and he was going to kill us if we were of color, and if we had a hat, and if we were played sports.
And what did you do at that point?
I just started screaming and crying and telling him not to shoot me. And so he shot the girl. She shot her in the head in front of me. And he shot the black kid because he was black. And he shot him in the face.
To the families who have lost their loved ones, to the parents who have lost their beloved children, to the wounded children and their families, to the people of the community of Littleton, I can only say tonight that the prayers of the American people are with you.
As he addressed the nation on television tonight, President Clinton reflected on the agony of a small Colorado community and the nation as he promised help.
I've asked the Attorney General and the Secretary of Education to stand ready to assist local law enforcement, the schools, the families, the entire community during this time of crisis and sorrow. A crisis response team is ready now to travel to Colorado, and I strongly believe that we should do whatever we can to get enough counselors to the families and the children as quickly as possible.
No one can overestimate the work crisis counselors do, but after Pearl, Mississippi, after Paducah, Kentucky, after Jonesboro, Arkansas, and Springfield, Oregon, parents, teachers, and students are asking when the day will come when crisis counselors won't have to be sent in the first place.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, our guests have been waiting very patiently. Among them, Sarah Schweitzberger, a young lady who is going to tell us about her experiences today in Columbine High School, as well as Robert Butterworth, a psychologist and teen trauma expert. And we still have Kevin Dwyer with us. We're going to take a break, be right back with all of our guests to tell us her story. Sarah, a pretty harrowing day. Can you just tell us where you were and what you heard and what you saw?
Yeah, I was down in the Commons eating lunch when it all happened, and I heard like gunshots. It sounded like big cannons. I mean, it was just loud, like echoing through the halls. And I mean, there were so many kids everywhere, and we heard, I was like stood up and I saw smoke out in the, like where all the cars were in the parking lot, and I don't know, I guess it might have been like some kind of bomb or something, and then somebody ran in and he just said, everybody get down, everybody down. And so we got down, and then one of the teachers ran through, and he opened a door to the auditorium, like a back door, and we ran through the auditorium and out one of the side doors, and we had to run through Clement Park and jump a fence, and we went over to the Columbine Library, where people, you know, all the librarians were really nice and helping us, you know, get cell phones to call our parents, and you know, they gave us food and water, and you know, they were really helpful.
Sarah, I'm trying to imagine this in the Commons. Is that outside or inside a structure?
That's inside, but it's downstairs, and there's windows all around on one side, and I mean, there's just tons of tables and tons of kids everywhere, and but it's inside the building.
Is this what is referred to as the cafeteria?
Yeah, it's the same place.
All right, so this is where the gunman came, I guess, as soon as you got out and were shooting. What have you heard went on in that area after you left?
After I left, I heard that they might have found a couple bodies down there, but I don't know because I was towards one of the sides of the commons and I got out pretty fast, so I wasn't hanging around. I mean, I didn't want to be there. I just ran as fast as I could, and I mean, I hope, you know, none of them were my friends, or even if they're people I've never met before. I mean, my heart goes out to their families. There's nothing I can't really tell their parents anything.
Do you know anything about these, without naming them, these two young men or this black trench coat mafia clique? What do you know about them?
Well, I've heard people talking about the trench coat mafia or whatever, but I mean, I just saw them. I saw them around school all the time, but I didn't think anything of it. You know, they were just in their own little group doing their thing. I mean, they never threatened me or were mean or anything, and one of the guys was actually in my gym class last semester, and he was nice. I mean, he never started anything with anybody. He just really friendly guy. I mean, never gotten any fights. They just kept to themselves pretty much. I mean, I'd never really heard of anything going on.
How long did it take you after you escaped to figure out what was going on and who they were?
It actually took probably a couple hours. I mean, after we went over to the Columbine library, everybody was just trying to find friends and crying. I mean, I was hysterical. I was crying, and then we went in and they had they had a TV on, and so we kind of found out what was going on, but the black trench coat thing, we didn't hear about that for a while. We didn't know what was going on with that. So.
Sarah, what about your friends? Did you have friends that had a more harrowing time of it?
Yeah, my friend Katie, who was on earlier, and she was in her science class, and a couple of my friends were like in closets hiding, and I mean, some of them, luckily a lot of my friends went out to lunch today, and so they were just coming back, so they didn't have any part of it, and a couple of them were homesick, but for the most part, I think my friends are okay. I've tried to get a hold of as many people as I can, but
do you have any idea about the people that were targeted by these gunmen?
I've just heard that they were going after the people that played sports and minority groups, but I really don't know. I wasn't around long enough for them to, like, I didn't hear anybody talking about it, but that's just what I've heard from other students.
Sarah, this is your high school. Are you going to be able to go back?
I don't know. It's just going to be different. I mean, walking down the hallways of some place, I always thought I was safe there with everybody. I mean, I thought this was a wonderful neighborhood, and just now when I walk down the hallways and look at the lockers, there'll probably be holes in them, and when I sit in a class and look over, maybe it's somebody I'd never met before, but they were in my class and I just see an empty seat. I don't think I'll be able to handle it. I don't know.
Sarah Schweizberger, thanks for staying up and talking to us. Good luck. We're going to take a break. When we come back, a couple of our experts on why this stuff happens and what can we do about it. Well-to-do community shoots his parents, goes to school, shoots two students, kills two students, 22 wounded. We all said, how could this happen? We've got to be able to spot these kids among us. Everybody went to work on it, missed this group. How does this happen? How is it possible that schools, especially in well-to-do areas that have the money to spend on psychologists, don't get around to seeing these kids?
Well, first of all, John, one of the problems is that a lot of these kids that are alienated, and we've always had alienated kids, but, you know, these kids become real powerful because they get linked together. So, you know, 2 or 3 deviant kids get together with 2 or 3 other deviant kids via the internet, and we're talking about 100 kids talking about everything from anarchy to death rock. So, in one hand, you have kids that were always alienated, but much more powerful. Secondly, that's the myth, isn't it? That, you know, a lot of people left the cities, the small communities, and as we see from each of these shootings, most of them are in small communities, middle class, but you have middle class kids that are alienated, angry, and they don't not even care about others, but it's starting to look like they don't care about themselves. And the sad thing is, unfortunately, that this may not be the end.
Catherine Ramsland, your book, Piercing the Darkness, you have any explanations for this stuff?
Well, I think that a lot of it's the feeling of being an outsider, feeling disempowered, and searching for a way to feel powerful. So they create fantasies and role play things, and sometimes the fantasy then has to become reality because they have to prove themselves.
back to Kevin Dwyer a second, school psychologist. I mean, you know, when this stuff comes up, one is tempted to say, what children's rights? I want to peek inside this kid's head and see how much trouble I've got coming.
Well, I think that it's important for us to look at children in terms of children who have needs, and looking at their needs not by psychoanalyzing them, but by trying to address them early on. You know, last year the president put out this book, which was to deal with helping schools identify the early warning signs that kids demonstrate, and to try to address them early so that they don't end up in groups, you know, in groups that reinforce each other's inappropriate behaviors.
Mr. Dwyer, we'll let you finish that point right after this quick break. Got to go. We'll be right back.